I found myself around a dark corner and found me a liquor boy.
You're a boy of liquor. I believe I shall.
It's like a weird Pinocchio story.
Wares, good sir.
You ended up on Pleasure Island afterwards.
Well, they only sold them, at least the place I went to, like in 12 packs.
I'm
not going to buy 24 cans of beer to try 2.
Going to air.
Stand by film.
5,
Stand by music.
4,
Stand by announce.
3, 2, 1.
And fade up.
Fish are friends, not food.
Make it Centauri time.
Too much iron on your blood.
Buddy the Elf, what's your favorite color?
Hey, what happened?
Let's fly!
Let's get pissed and watch boom.
Hello, you got a base.
Are you saying there's something wrong with my gear?
We're going streaking!
He found me!
He's doing his Superman thing.
I still only counts as one!
Why is the rum always gone?
Well, welcome. Once again, everyone, to a brand new episode of 20 Years, 4 Beers. We are a podcast dedicated to rewatching movies from 2 decades ago, while simultaneously enjoying a minimum of 4 modern beers. My name is Steve, and this is my big brother,
Tim.
And we are coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have just watched and recorded our episode on 28 Days Later. Go check that one out. And as usual, we sit together afterwards and discuss another film over another beer. So we refer to these as our happy hour episodes.
Hey, you guys. Happy hour is from 4 to 6.
In this happy hour, we will be discussing a little-known indie drama, which sometimes I make a joke about little-known or whatever. This is a little-known indie drama.
Yeah.
In Whale Rider. Whale Rider is the story of Paikea, a young girl growing up in a small Maori village in New Zealand, and who is a descendant of the original chief who brought the people to the island. At birth, her twin brother, the expected future chief, dies unexpectedly, and Paikea is raised not as a future chief, but rather as somewhat of a disappointment by her grandfather. She must fight for his love and acceptance and find a way to prove that she is the rightful future leader of their people.
That's a great description.
Thank you. I'm just going to put a caveat here is I apologize to anyone listening who may or may not know or be a part of the Polynesian culture, because I'm going to butcher some names coming up.
Totally.
But dozens of people who are probably white and from the Midwest will be fine. The film is directed by Nikki Caro. Easy. Written by Caro and Witty Itimera. I'm going to go with Itimera.
Yeah.
And stars Keisha Castle-Hughes, Rawiri Paratine, Vicky Houghton, and Cliff Curtis. I'm fine with that so far.
Yeah, thanks, Cliff.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, to finish, we have something very special. One of our students has won not only our own school speech contest, but the East Coast area schools as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Paikea Apirana.
Did you know about this?
She said she had a surprise for him.
I ngā rangatira i ngā iwi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. This speech is a token of my deep love and respect for Koro Apirana, my grandfather. My name is Paikea Apirana.
Go on, bub.
And I come from a long line of chiefs stretching all the way back to Hawaii, where our ancient ones are. The ones that first heard the land crying and sent a man. His name was also Paikea. And I'm the most recent descendant. But I was not the leader my grandfather was expecting, and by being born, I broke the line back to the ancient ones. It wasn't anybody's fault, it just happened.
Our first segment, as usual, is Drinking Buddies.
Come on, not my beer.
Where we present the 4 beers that we had, 2 for each of us, since we watched these movies separately, and give our expert drinking ratings. Tim, why don't you get us started?
I had, from Wild Mind down the road,
of course,
their Charismatic Microfauna Hazy Double IPA.
God,
again, I know.
I
love them, but stupid.
I don't even want to
name.
hear the description of that. Like, yeah,
it's very tasty, but it's a 4.
What was the name of it?
Charismatic Microfauna.
Sure, totally,
exactly. Hazy Double IPA. It was great. It was a nice, solid option. 4 for me. And then I had Castle Danger out of
Castle.
I know, it came out.
Keisha Castle Hughes theme beer.
Serendipitous. Didn't even think about that.
You blew it.
Curses. Castle Danger. They're right now. They have this like option of like a grapefruit IPA, blood orange, cream ale, and they're surprisingly very good in terms of like they're not very synthetic. I had their sea salt lime lager. Oddly enough, we had earlier tonight a different one. 4.25 for me. And Mike, you had talked about the other ones. So many of these are like the kind of synthetic, like Bud Light lime, kind of like, ugh. It's fantastic. So if you're out in the cities or the local area and you have like that option where it's a 4-pack or a 12-pack, 4 different variety, it's fantastic.
I kind of avoided that. Like,
it's so good. The grapefruit IPA, I'll give you one before you leave. It's incredible.
I don't know. I don't know if my heart meds can. I'm not supposed to have grapefruit.
Oh, then maybe you can't.
I think I could have one.
Yeah, I'll just enjoy it for you. But anyway, those are the 2 I had.
Our dad has been on heart meds for years and has grapefruit. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. I'm sure it's fine.
What'd you have?
Well, okay. So I had 2 newly released beers from one of our favorites in town.
So jealous.
Fulton Brewing out of Minneapolis. They released 2 new IPA styles in a rebranding effort to get back to some basics and get away from seltzers or other sort of basic beers.
Just a basic bitch beer.
They had, and this is where what was the name of that Insight one?
Their Static Flow.
Oh, Static Flow. Okay. But I think I would like to see more breweries do what Fulton did on this and just name it Juicy IPA and Hazy IPA.
Yep.
We're to a point now where we don't need to have creative names because they're forgettable.
Yeah.
Like the names are forgettable.
Like Charismatic Microfauna.
I will never remember that name. It's like they think it's they think it's like if I could be more memorable, you're going to remember me. No, I remember good beer.
Yep.
If you don't make me a good beer, I don't give a shit about your name.
Yep.
So their Juicy IPA, as with almost anything Fulton does, the floor is pretty high. You're not going to find anything from Fulton that is poorly made, bad. It's really rare.
Yep.
And this was no exception. I had a 4 out of 5 on it. It was a nice, flavorful entrance into the Juicy IPA style, but nothing new. There was nothing sort of like, oh my god, you got to try this. That's not a knock on it by any means. Yeah. It's just like it's good. And then their Hazy IPA. To me, this was a terrific hazy.
Ooh. This
is the one to get between so their new series had obviously 3 beers, 300, which you've covered and is amazing.
So good.
The Juicy IPA and the Hazy IPA. I have a 4.25 out of 5 on the hazy. Very flavorful, but it's not a bitter hazy. It doesn't have that sort of dankness to it.
Okay.
Of the 2, I would get this one over the Juicy, but both are very good options. I cannot wait for a mix pack to come up with all 3 though, because all 3 are good. You got a good West Coast, or like I think 300 is the West Coast.
Yeah.
You got a good Juicy and I think a really good hazy IPA. So I was really glad to grab them both.
Nice.
And then what are we drinking now?
Randomly, I went to a
randomly
liquor store nearby called Liquor Boy. Had never been there before this week to stock
I
up.
found myself around a dark corner and
Yes.
found me a liquor boy.
You're a boy of
Yes.
liquor. I
Oh,
believe
yes.
I shall
It's like a weird Pinocchio
pick
story. Yeah.
your
Yeah.
wares, good sir.
You ended up on Pleasure Island afterwards.
So then I was looking around stuff, and I was like, huh, this palette of options from Surly. And I'm hit or miss in Surly. I'm like, fine. And
Again, the floor is high with Surly.
Yep.
As much as they piss us off sometimes,
Yeah.
you're not going to have a bad beer.
Exactly. And it was like made exclusively for this liquor
boy, yeah.
company. Cold Yeller Juicy Pale Ale, which initially I'm like, please don't be like a cold brewed or whatever. But it's just a
what was
juicy
the-
pale ale.
Yeah.
I like that. It's their description is fetch this beer.
Yeah.
So Cold Yeller. I like that. And I am fine on pale ales.
Mm-hmm.
I like this.
Yeah.
This is pleasant. It's a 4
Yeah.
for me. I'm thoroughly like, okay. I'm enjoying
It
it's gonna
almost
work.
feels like a cold IPA, but a pale ale.
Yeah.
Like it's got a crispness to it that is not out there in a lot of pale ales.
Yeah, that cold IPA does
There's
come through.
there's
but
a
like the
bit of
pale
a
ale,
cold IPA thing where, because the cold IPAs, you found one that you liked. Otherwise, I've never found one. Didn't you find one from like Castle
of
Danger?
No,
or
out of
from,
Duluth. Bent Paddle.
Bent Paddle. Yeah,
Yes.
you said you liked it, and I was like,
I was shocked.
I was like, I've never had a good one. This kind of to me feels like that. It feels like a cold pale ale.
Yeah.
And I don't mind. I have a 4 out of 5 as well in this. This is actually really,
It's really
drinkable. It's solid, especially on a hot day. It's good.
Hold on. What a dumb name
All right.
of a company.
I know, Liquor Boy.
Yeah, Liquor Boy.
Well, at least it's not Liquor Girl.
I think that is a very
it would have been
astute observation.
I mean, all right. So our next segment then is the social network,
If you guys were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
where we take a look back at the critical and fan reception from 20 years ago. As usual, Tim is nice enough to research these, so please take it away.
The IMDb rating is
Murmur?
the same as we had earlier tonight.
I swear to God, I didn't even listen earlier. What was the IMDb?
7.5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Out of
there we
10
go.
for both
All
movies
right.
tonight. I know, right?
Fundamentally different films.
Yeah, very different. Colin Kennedy of Empire Magazine said, like a breath of fresh South Pacific air, director Nikki Caro combines classic themes with a little seen cultural perspective to come up with an uplifting crowd pleaser. Peter Howell of Toronto Star said Whale Rider is a film about gender empowerment in which the struggle between the sexes isn't reduced to crude stereotypes, and the lessons learned come honestly and with a sense of genuine revelation. And Roger Ebert, Big Man Raj, gave it 4 out of 4 stars. So the genius of Whale Rider is the way it sidesteps all the obvious cliches of the underlying story and makes itself fresh, observant, tough, and genuinely moving. Keisha Castle Hughes more than holds her own as she stands up to her grandfather in painful scenes, finds it dignity, and yet in the next second she is running around the village like the kid she should be. Simply put, she is a revelation. So many films by and about teenagers are mired in vulgarity and stupidity. This one, thankfully, like its heroine, dares to dream. And Academy Awards that year was up for 1 nomination for Best Lead Actress for Keisha Castle Hughes at 13 years old, ultimately losing to Charlize Theron that year.
I find it a little funny that I'd be curious I'm pretty sure this is the same year that 13 came out with, what's her face in the lead role? What's her name?
Evan Rachel Wood.
Yeah, Evan Rachel Wood, right from Westworld and that kind of stuff. And like, that's what kind of cracks me up is like, because she was not nominated for that year, but she was 13 and like that teenager, and that's like teen angsty sort of drug use or whatever.
Yeah, true.
So I wonder if that's like a. But I bet Roger liked 13, but I see where he's going with that. Is
Yes.
like in pop culture, a lot of kids who are the leads tend to be like Evan Rachel Wood and like 13 or whatever. I wonder if it's like a little bit of a dig at that. I don't know.
Throwing shade.
But anyway. Well, with the beers and reviews out of the way, that brings us to Spotlight.
They knew, and they let it happen.
Our reaction segment where we highlight and discuss our top takeaways of any kind from rewatching the film. I think I'll start us off on this one.
Cool.
My first thing, I almost right away, like something that I generally have found interesting and fun while we've done this podcast or just hanging out is that we have covered a pretty wide variety, I think, of styles. I think we've gone out of our way to do that. Of the styles of films, sizes of budgets, and from all around the world, we've covered many. And this to me is the epitome of that lower budget foreign film that somehow we not only saw back then, as you saw it back then, I did too, but we are talking about 20 years later. I love it. I just was struck by this like feeling of like, how the hell are we watching a movie created by the South Pacific Pictures Company, along with 2 other small companies, funded by a New Zealand public film program, created by people with no Hollywood support, somehow finding its way into the Oscars and U.S. pop culture. It actually made some money. It had a budget of $3.5 million. It made $41 million worldwide. Like, this is not a film that lost money by any means.
Yes.
And now is watched by 2 guys in Minnesota 20 years on. There's a fundamental sort of like, on my rewatch, I was struck by that early on. Like, it is astonishing to me that a film like this not only exists, there are lots of independent films that exist, but that's really tough to even do, but found its way from the shores of New Zealand all the way to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yep. That was my first reaction. I was just like, aside from what we're going to talk about here on the movie, and I think we both like this movie, but just like, yeah, that was my first reaction.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, yes, doing this, whenever we review options that come up in a given year, of like, what do we want to watch every month?
Mm-hmm.
Primary and then happy hour. So we got 24 to work with, potentially.
Yep.
You'd think, oh my gosh, there's so many to choose from. And some are like, yeah, I mean, there's standout ones and we want to do those. And then there's like, where can we find the hidden gems?
Yeah, but neither one of us needed to fight for this. This was like sort of like when we made a list, like, it was a happy hour movie for sure.
Totally.
But it was like, yeah, we have to talk about Whale Rider. Like, it was just a no-brainer to talk about this movie of all movies. Yeah.
And for those that listen that have not possibly either heard of it or seen it, to me, this is like a litmus test movie where quite often I feel like people, like especially movie fans, like if you make a pop culture reference or a movie quote reference and you get it, you're like, oh, okay, like we're in the same, we're in the know. This is a movie where if you somehow have seen this and you appreciate it like we do, I'm like, we can be friends.
And I'm almost the opposite because, well, I agree with you on that, but I'm saying, like, if somebody were to see this and say, I don't like that movie, I'd be like, you and I cannot be friends.
Yes, but
like,
yeah,
it's almost
I agree.
the opposite.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's like if you somehow don't like it, like, what the hell's wrong with you?
My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which in some ways, from a cultural standpoint, are 2 movies, very independent films, bringing up a culture we didn't know.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like, okay, you don't have to love this movie like I do, but if you hate this movie, I don't know if I can talk to you.
I agree.
Now. But anyway,
how can you possibly walk out of this movie feeling
that
you don't enjoy it? So my I don't remember, like, I read it a long time ago, and not to belabor the point with Roger Ebert, but I remember reading one time that he said, when asked by somebody or whatever, his love of movies is because he professed they are the most distilled version of empathy you can find, where it contains complex stories about people's lives or emotions we may not have a chance to experience in a 1.5 to 2 hour window. Books don't do it. Other things don't quite approximate it. And his view is like
time frame.
Yes, like the time frame of distilling complex empathy.
Yeah, and
I truly believe watching this again, and I haven't seen it in a long time, despite how much I love this movie.
It's probably been 15 years for me, or whatever.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've definitely rewatched it since it came out, but it's been a long time.
I agree.
I mean, I had to buy it. Like, I didn't.
Yeah, I thought I bought it. I don't.
No, I was like, I'm buying it. Yeah, I didn't realize it.
It's one of the best examples of this. I agree. 2 white dudes from Minneapolis, Minnesota area watching a movie about all the details you talked about, of like halfway across the world. And I've always been...
I'm sorry, can you think of that? The reverse is what they've had to deal with, right? Like in these villages or whatever, it might have a movie theater. They're getting the Avengers and they're getting the Batman movies and they're getting what we watch and
Yes.
take advantage for, the fact that that stream came back the other way
Yes.
is, it's almost impossible to think of how that's even like, even in a somewhat internet was around,
Sure.
don't get me- we're not that old,
Yeah.
but social media for sure.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
the fact that it was out there and we could still see it is astonishing.
Yeah, like the cultural hegemony of like, we are the stories
What
in the world.
did you just say?
Yes. Yeah.
What word?
Hegemony.
I don't know what that is.
It's like we control the narrative.
You made that shit up.
I don't. If you look at hegemony,
I don't want to look at
Yeah,
it.
it's the we are the
Fine.
ones that drive the stories of the world.
Got it.
And this somehow got through.
Mhm.
And I've always been struck by the place, the story.
It's like the trout going upstream and getting past the bear.
Yeah,
like just
exactly.
What are we doing here? Yeah.
Like, and that to me, I remember seeing this in a sneak preview with a person who used to work at Barnes & Noble. Anyway, her dad was like a critic or whatever. Like, and so we watched it, and I was like, I was floored by
Yeah.
it, and I couldn't believe watching a movie like this.
Yeah.
Of this 12-year-old girl and her coming to terms with all these weighty concepts of a foreign off on the other side of the world.
Nothing
and yet
we
it's
had seen up
accessible.
until this
No,
point. Nothing.
And it watching it last night, it holds up and
Totally.
then some.
And then some. Yeah.
And again, I will be very clear. I have not watched it since I've had kids.
It doesn't matter though. It
I
doesn't matter
agree.
though because we loved it back then.
Sure.
You know, I mean, Roger gave it a 4 out of 4. I assume
Yes.
he had kids or other people. These other people who had kids loved it. We
Yes.
loved it without kids back in the day. So I mean, like, I don't necessarily think that matters in
Yes.
terms of what you're talking about, but there is that somewhat of a caveat of our reaction now.
Yes. By the way, hegemony means leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others.
Good for you. I'm cutting that.
Please do.
It's called power, bitch.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah. Prime example of hegemony. Control the narrative.
That's right. That's right. Were you done there?
I was done with that point. I agree. Like, it's so amazing that a movie like this can come through and do really well. And I'm so happy we're watching it again.
Yep.
To be able to talk about it where, oh, okay, other thoughts to come. Yes.
So shall we talk about the movie?
Please do.
Do you want to? You echoed my point. Did you want to?
No, that was my echo point.
Look, I will tell you, Keisha Castle Hughes is where we need to start this conversation.
Right?
We just
Right
have
off the
to.
bat. Absolutely.
Like, this would be almost a League of Their Own style conversation, and I would love to have that segment here if she had gone on to a larger career later on.
Sure.
It's not to say that she hasn't carved out a career for herself. She's actually on TV now. She's in FBI Most Wanted. She's on CBS. She's in like 70 some episodes. She's actually a lead character.
She was in Game of Thrones?
She was in Game of Thrones. Like, she has carved out a career for herself.
Yeah.
But not, to me, what a League of Their Own as a segment has represented over the time to say, like, you have separated yourself from the pack. But when you see her in this film, she is so incredible that you would think that she would go on. I mean, Roger said it too. Like, she was so good. Like, she would be a huge star. She is flat out unreal in this, especially in the back half as she starts to sort of understand who she really is at her core. But even the first half, to his point of Raj, is that back and forth between being a kid to having the weight of this culture on you or whatever. The school performance scene alone in that sort of back half, where she dedicated to her grandfather, is Oscar worthy on its own.
Yes.
Like, on its own. She is effortless. And I will say, like, I was reading that Nikki Caro, she actually went out of her way. So Keisha's from Australia. She's from, like, big city in Australia, whatever.
Yeah.
Such as it is. And then they're in these coastal towns of New Zealand. Nikki Caro, I don't want to say forced in a negative way. She had her wear no shoes. She, even off filming, she was only barefoot the whole time. Like, they went out of their way to find a way to make Keisha Castle Hughes, like, indigenous in such a way to this culture that she was always barefoot. And she's barefoot in the movie. There's no shoes on her. Like, they went out of their way, and even not filming, she was always this sort of thing. And then I also saw a story that scene of the school performance scene was done in effectively one take.
Dear
Believe it
God.
or not, they did
Dear
it with
God.
They did it with two cameras. They did have to break in the middle because there was technical issues with the cameras,
Sure.
and so then her tutor basically had to help her stay in that sort of moment while they fixed the cameras. But they had two cameras. They filmed it from two angles, and that was it. They did it in one take.
Dear God. How do oh.
Which I will say, it's almost more impressive when people do it in 10 takes and can still get that emotion.
Yeah.
But when you're 12 years old,
Exactly.
like, yeah, everything about this, if you love this movie as much as we do, you'll love it for multiple reasons, but number one on that list will be Keisha Cassidy.
She was the first thing I had to talk about in terms of
You
like,
have to. You
into the
cannot
weeds.
talk
Yes.
about this movie without her.
And
Yeah.
think about like when we talk about a movie like this breaking through across the world and having the impact it did, and it's based around a story of a 12-year-old girl and the weight you would place upon that actor to carry the story. And they like top 5 child performances.
Yeah. Yeah, nail
not,
it.
like-
Nail it. Not even as a forgiving, like, oh, they're a kid.
the kid,
Because
like-
we liked About a Boy, and Nicholas Holt's fine in that movie.
yes.
He's fine in that movie. He's sort
Yes.
of, but nowhere near the emotional level of what she brings into this movie.
It is I still remember the time being just completely floored by this young girl. And we talk about the weight of like, oh, it's not just that they're doing a great story, because About a Boy is like, oh, you know, depression and mental health and other challenges. And then I think of like Haley Joel Osment with Sixth Sense. Like these are things where this to me was a somewhat different in kind, where the generational pressure placed upon this girl where she was not meant to be the leader.
No.
That was destined for this culture. Her twin brother was supposed to be it, and he died in childbirth and killed their mom.
Yeah, this is like saying Leia is supposed to be the ultimate Skywalker versus Luke or whatever.
Yes.
Like you just go, no.
And there is no Luke.
Right, yeah.
And it's just,
exactly.
and it's just her.
He's dead. Yeah, exactly.
And the dad doesn't want her.
Right.
And
well,
then
no, the dad wants her.
Sorry. He can't handle.
He can't handle the situation. The grandfather, the leader does not want
But then the leader, the chief, doesn't want her.
Yeah.
So this isn't just like interesting story. Like how she is able to carry all of that is
without talking about it.
Yes. Without ever expressing it in a way.
She's carrying it inside.
Like, and then she can handle the light moments of being just a young girl, having fun with her friends, and like the balance of that. And I agree. Watching again was incredible. And it just, I'm so floored by what she was able to accomplish. And just think about the odds of that, where you need to have, from a geographic standpoint, Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, you have to have
just a numbers perspective of a young girl at that age of the story coming out who can pull off this in a way that makes it work. And it's her first movie ever.
It's first acting role that we know of. Yeah.
Right? And she is it's indescribably amazing to think about that. Again, distilled empathy for me. Just she's I still remember it, and I watched it again this week. Across the board, she embodies that character unbelievably well.
And kudos to Nicky Caro too, because even the other kids, like the main boy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
He's good. Like these are kids who are, with a couple exceptions, like Keisha and then Cliff Curtis and a few other people like in the main cast, almost everyone in this movie was a local villager or somebody in that area, and they still got pretty decent performances out of kids who had never acted before.
Yes.
I at no point in this movie are you like, no, that's a local.
Exactly.
That's a guy who, and this happens a lot and I believe in representation. I'm going to talk about that in a second. You see that a lot in movies that take place on reservations where they go out of their way to find locals, and that's great.
Yes.
and it should happen, but the performances oftentimes will lack.
Yes.
They're a little bit less. They're like, okay, you're just reading a script.
Yes.
Versus like finding that character. They found a way to get these kids to actually be really good.
Yes.
Like Castle Hughes aside, like everyone, like it's just.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing.
And it does bring out the whole performance too then, because then they're just being kids.
Yes.
Like with the stick or whatever, and they're doing the thing, and it's.
Well, you think about like authenticity.
Yeah.
And there can be a whole thing of like, again, forgive the white mansplaining perspective.
Yeah, I don't know if you know what this is, but
where authentic can feel like,
for you ladies out there, mansplaining
is.
Yeah.
Representation is so incredible because I want to see that. Like, I want to have the stories that are compelling. But if it's clearly or it's not delivered well, it feels like an acting thing. This is a variation of that where it is so authentic and it represents it, and they find the people that are truly like genuine in these roles where it doesn't feel like I'm watching a movie. I know I am, but they're so effortless in the portrayal where it doesn't feel like I'm ever out of the film.
No.
Where then I can access it and connect with it. And so I agree. It's what they're able to do with that type of authenticity is incredible.
I want to talk about representation to a certain extent. Again, coming at this from our perspective is tough in a lot of ways, especially from a judgmental standpoint.
Sure.
For me, this movie is a great example of how representation works.
Yep.
Because it comes from an authentic place. It's not forced.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's representation because they don't make it a thing. It's just not.
Yes.
Look at us. It's representation.
Yeah.
I am all for recasting of roles.
Yep.
I don't care about that one way or another. But that's where representation becomes a hot topic thing. Like Little Mermaid.
Sure.
You know, that's representation. Great. Enjoy yourself.
Yes.
But it becomes hot topic because your representation is now taking away from somebody else's representation.
Sure.
A movie like this is just telling me a story that takes place in a place that is like here. Find a common story. To me, that's where representation for me works so well.
Yes.
That they went and told the story they wanted to tell.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be in a village of that has a chief who came across on a whale and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
I don't understand what that's like. But that's not the point of this story. The point of this movie is what we talked about with Paikea and Keisha Castle Hughes. The point is finding all she wants in the world is to be accepted by her family, to be loved by the people around her. We can all relate to that.
Yes.
Find the relatable stories within your culture, and we can all relate to it.
Yes.
And I liken this to, we talked about this with Naomi Harris and Moonlight. I really love Moonlight as a movie.
Yeah.
But it is not an example of representation to me. Because at no point in that movie, I love it. I think it's a well-crafted movie. And I will die on the hill of saying I saw it before it won the Oscar for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Because your expectation is much lower then, right?
True.
I don't relate to a poor gay black kid in Miami or in Florida. Like there's no relation there.
Yep.
And my problem with Moonlight is, it's not that I don't like it as a movie. They don't find the key elements that sort of tie into all of us.
Yes.
Whereas Whale Rider, to me, I don't know what this girl's going through in her life.
Yep.
And to me, representation says, you and I are different cultures, you and I are different backgrounds, but we can relate on these fundamental core human elements. And that's where Whale Rider stands out to me.
Yes.
Is it shows representation that you come from a different background, I come from a different background, but damn it, we have these same core needs in our life or whatever. And it just ties into that. And I think 20 years on, I love doing this. I doubt we're doing it with Moonlight in 2037.
Yeah.
You know, but like, I wouldn't want to, because it's just it doesn't compute. No fault to the movie in terms of how they made it or the performances or anything like that. But what stands out about Whale Rider for me is that it's a perfect example of how representation matters in the best possible way, without it being a white studio throwing money at whatever, like a female Ghostbusters. Although I do like that movie, like whatever it is, like let's just make them all that. Like, no, tell me a good goddamn story, about your culture, and I will relate to it.
I love you mentioning that, because that was one of the points I want to talk about. Was there can be such a wonderful balance between an incredibly specific experience and yet universal themes.
Yeah.
That audiences connect to. Yes. So finding one's place in the world, familial love, obligation, grief, hope, coming of age. These are things that you think on paper make sense. And in many ways, I had to stop 30 minutes into Moonlight because I'm like, something came up, I got distracted. But it's a coming of age story, cool. Like, but it didn't strike me as universal in the terms of like, and
you didn't have a drug dealing father figure.
Yeah, I mean,
although Mahershala Ali is outstanding,
he's so great.
In the movie,
yes,
but I'm just saying,
yes. So I just think,
it didn't tie into, but that was a personal story for the creators,
sure,
and it worked.
Yes,
but it didn't tie into the universal themes.
Yes,
I feel like,
and so that's, and we are not creators in an artistic world.
No,
at least I can't speak for myself. I'm not. I'm happily on the consumption side of that spectrum. But I feel like
you can't have one without the other, man.
I agree.
I'm so tired of people being like, you're not a creator.
Do the artwork. Well, yeah, but
if nobody's enjoying your work, you're dead.
Hence why we have beer. I don't make beer. I want to consume it. I will happily play my part, but you produce it. But to me, I think of what's accessible from an audience. What's an avenue that I can connect with? What's my in? And Whale Rider...
Without, like, you need to challenge people too. Like,
sure.
You don't want to, like, baby people, but I agree.
But think about this.
Where you're going with this. Yep.
A year ago, roughly, we watched Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Right? And that struck me as watching this again was like, I'd never seen that movie until seeing it last year.
The number of people who have that as their, like, favorite
it's
film
insane.
Is astonishing to me.
To me, it's like, there's nothing universal about it.
No.
And it's terrible. And it's offensively bad.
I think it's people who haven't watched it since they watched it when they were kids.
Probably.
Yeah.
Because it's
Looking
so
at you, Lincoln.
Unique in its experience, great. But nothing is accessible from a universal standpoint. And that, to me, I think, is what sets some movies apart from others.
Yeah.
Or artwork, or whatever it might be, a storytelling device where, sure, tell an incredibly unique, finite experience, have at it. That's the story you want to tell? Great. But don't be surprised if it doesn't land in a broader perspective or way.
Yeah.
Whale Rider...
Yeah, without looking down on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Whale Rider, to me, has always stood out to me as far as it is I have no experience whatsoever tied to that. And yet I can connect to it instantly, right away. I mean, the movie starts with the freaking death of a baby and the mom. And it goes from there. And it's so moving and wonderful. And it's grounded by her performance. And that to me is what stands out to me. So I agree. I'm glad you talk about, like, I want stories to be told that are perspective broadening.
Yeah.
But that implies I have some level of common perspective.
I agree.
And if you don't, I'm lost.
It's so interesting, and I don't want to go too into the weeds on this. Like, we're on Pride Weekend here in Minneapolis, and I often have this conversation with people who, like, I'm not gay. I'm not. And, I'm not on in that group of people.
Yep.
But in order to, I don't want to say get me, but in order to allow me and to understand you, you have to connect with me. You have to say it. Like, you can't sit there and say, you have to understand where I'm coming from. No. You have to tell me why I should care about your story, your journey. We need to connect on this.
Yep.
And I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Yes.
I think you see where I'm coming from. I was just saying, like, I need to connect with your story, not for your sake. You know what I mean? Your story is your story. My story is my story. We don't have to connect.
Yes.
But in order for us to continue going forward and accepting each other, we have to find some sort of common ground. Like you just have to. It could be the most minimal thing. It could be like, I'm a Vikings fan. Me too. We're best friends ever. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
But you have to find some sort of common ground. And movies like Whale Rider, to me, I think that's what I mean, is like, they overlook. That's why independent films are so crucial with this, is they overlook, like, there's not a CEO worried about whitewashing this to make sure it gets into as many theaters as possible, and God knows how many blah, blah, blah. All they wanted to do with this is tell a key story, and they knew at its core it would connect with people.
Yes.
Love it.
So can I add, and
Go ahead.
I am going to tear up. I will probably.
Okay.
A bit.
All right. Deep breath.
You mentioned before, but the speech scene
it's
that she gives in front of the community is, I always say, if I want a good cry, I'm going to watch The Green Mile. Like that's like cathartic.
Yeah, if you got 3 hours to kill,
drain everything from my eyes. I need this. Great. This might, and I'm so frustrated that I haven't kept it in like my back pocket too. This is going to be my go-to if I want a quicker one.
This or Life is a House.
True.
Yeah.
Now being a parent, absolutely.
You got a boy and a girl, so you can go either way.
I get parental jackpot. But what she does in that scene is I don't know how do you connect it as she's filming it at probably 12 or 11.
She was 12 at the time. Yeah. 13 when she was nominated.
To how she is able to keep her composure, and yet I'm sobbing on the couch.
Yeah, I agree.
And you pivot that with, not going to spoil anything, what's happening outside that building.
Yep.
From the weight of what they're talking about. Again, please watch this, people. Please.
Yeah, I agree. I've talked to a couple people in the last week. Like, what are you covering? And I'm like, Whale Rider. I've never heard about it.
Oh,
please, for God's sakes, go watch it.
I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's where the movie stands apart, where you would expect the thing to happen of like the grandfather arriving or something, and it doesn't. And what's going on is so much deeper that I don't want to ruin.
No, you absolutely cannot talk about it.
It's so
not a spoiler. You just can't.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so, and what she. So I had to draw it out where I have not cried that hard in a long time. Since watching that, I'm like, oh, but how does she do that?
I don't know.
To have that connection. So I'm amazed.
I don't know. We've talked about this, I think, in the past too. How anyone under the age of 18 probably can find a place to get there.
Yeah.
From an emotional standpoint. Like, I'm broken because this is like, really?
Yeah.
Now, granted, white privilege standpoint, I understand. We had different upbringings and things like that. But I could probably venture to guess that Keisha Castle Hughes did not have a rough upbringing. Given
confident.
That right, exactly.
Yes.
And yet still they find that sort of place to be able to get there believably, and it's
an incredible scene.
Yeah, you just can't we talked about the Spider-Verse. You can't undersell, you can't oversell how you will be floored.
Yes.
And we were floored without kids back in the day.
Totally.
Like, it's just now with kids you're like, oh, it's even more.
Yes.
I actually don't have this as one of my points listed, but I will say we covered Bruce Almighty, which I promise I'll edit soon. By
the time they hear this, it'll be edited.
Yeah, it'll be edited. That's fine. I love a movie like this that is spiritual without being religious.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
One of my all-time favorite movies, I'll admit, probably top 20, is a movie called The Way. With Martin Sheen, written and directed by Emilio Estevez.
Yep.
Because it's exactly that thing. It's spiritual, but it is not bang you over your head, Mel Gibson style religious.
True.
Now, granted, Hacksaw Ridge is awesome.
Oh, but so good.
But my point is, it's funny to come from Bruce Almighty, which I still think is a really, from a Christian perspective, is a very well done faith-based movie. This to me is not even necessarily faith-based. It's just that spiritual connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
It is so well done. I love that. But I'm just going to move on to my last point. Well, do you have any others?
I have one more.
Okay. Yeah. As a joke, I did write down, man, the live action Moana has some living up to do.
Right? Watch this.
Watch this. What? I described it to two people this last week, and they're like, sounds like Moana. I was like, then the live action movie's got some living up to do, man, because here we go. But I will say, for me, I had a recollection that this was a great example of a Cliff Curtis movie and how great of an actor he was. I don't know what over the years, got in my head on that one. And we love Cliff Curtis.
Yep.
And while that is true, he has a much smaller role than I seem to remember.
Yes.
The real performance, aside from Castle Hughes, to talk about here that we haven't talked about, is that of her grandfather, played by Rawiri Paratene, or Paratine, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce it. I could have looked it up. But we have not seen anything of him in the U.S. before or since. He's not a Hollywood actor of any kind. He's done stuff, don't get me wrong. There's other industries out there. But as Koro, a man who is fighting for the future of his people, but doing so looking through only the lens of the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is flat out incredible.
Absolutely.
Flat out. Castle Hughes is the reason to watch this movie.
Yes.
For sure. If I were to recommend anything. Astonishing as Koro, the grandfather.
Yes.
I don't know how much more to say beyond that. Tim Robbins, Jaimin Hunsu, and Ken Watanabe for Best Supporting Actor that year who are up. Absolutely.
Yep.
But I get it. Robbins won. We talked about Watanabe already.
Yep.
I can't wait to talk about In America, talking about you were just talking about when it comes to experiencing other people's cultures and In America, can't wait to talk about that movie.
Yep.
But Benicio del Toro for 29 Grams and Alec Baldwin for The Cooler were also nominated that year.
No.
Really?
The Cooler? Okay.
I like The Cooler and I like Alec Baldwin, but
No.
he's better than this guy?
Yes.
He's better than Wawiri?
No.
No, he's not. I cannot wait to the end of the year to talk about when we talk about Oscars and our picks and stuff. Because we talked about this with Watanabe and saying that Robbins is going to have a hard, we're going to see where this is. He is up there. Outstanding.
Yes.
Without being over the top. He's not all this guy wants to do. He literally was bred to protect his people and to breed the next guy. And now his son has left this. He's now in Germany. His son has abandoned.
Yes.
And now all he wanted was a grandson or a granddaughter. And now he's or not a granddaughter. He doesn't want a granddaughter.
No.
That's what he wants. And now he's just fighting to find some sort of legacy.
Yes.
And yet he has no big scene. He has no monologue. There's nothing to it. He is outstanding.
And what really clicks for this is early on when she has her voiceover of my grandfather didn't want me. And then he came around. And then you can see that veneer start to peel away as he goes along. Mm-hmm. Where it's no. We really need to see how this legacy will move forward. I agree.
To the point where he starts auditioning other boys.
Yes.
They needed a man in charge.
Yes.
And what it took was a whale rider, essentially.
Yes.
No spoiler, but just
yes.
That's what it took. That's the only way. It'd be great to have Ellen here to be see what it takes.
See what it takes.
Do you see what we're dealing with? Yeah.
I agree. I'm so glad I mentioned that because, she does not exist in her greatness in a bubble.
No. Everyone's good in this.
Yes.
But holy cow, is he outstanding.
Yes. And the grandmother.
Yeah. I wrote, her name down
the two of them together. Yeah. It just, you can see the dynamics of how he is grappling with the weight of that legacy.
Yeah,
and
she's that silent female character.
Yes.
We talked about this in Bend It Like Beckham.
Yes.
Or with the, the mothers, it'd be a little different with the father, but
The matriarchal.
There's always one of the two parents are like the quiet, like, we're going to get there.
Yeah, we're supportive of it. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned that because he is so good. And when things in the last act come together,
unreal.
That's where you can see that weight.
Yeah, it's breaking, right? He is just breaking. Like,
yes. Oh, so good. Last part was, or point for me was the score by Lisa Gerrard.
Sure.
And I think back now where like the late 90s, early 2000s.
This is Lisa Gerrard? I didn't even see that.
The entire thing was her. So she partnered with Hans Zimmer.
Yeah,
on
for Gladiator.
Tons of stuff. Gladiator. Mission Impossible 2.
God bless it. Yeah. But no.
The Insider.
The Insider. Yep.
Like she has that like ethereal voice that comes into it.
She's not an Oscar winner, right? I don't think she's won any.
She has not.
Yeah.
And it is so good in this.
Yeah.
Where I think it's the only one that I could see that she did like a score for something.
On her own.
She's been partnered like with composers.
That sounds really bad.
On her own.
On her
I agree.
own.
No, I
you
agree.
did this by yourself?
What? No. I agree.
Head.
Where she's like the only individual. And
yes,
it is such a great combination of her unique voice with the atmospheric sounds that they do that at times honestly sounds oddly whale-like. Where like the tone of it is hard to describe. And it has this foreboding sense throughout. Where you can tell right away where it's going forward. It's like, this is a weighty film. And I've always loved it. It's a great score by her.
All right. So with our reactions out of the way, that leads us into our next segment that we call The Verdict.
I'm going up there. I'm going to try it. I'm going to let the jury decide.
This is pretty much exactly how it sounds. Each of us takes a moment to put a cap on our reviews, give a rating, and whether or not the film holds up 2 decades later. Once again, spoiler alert, it holds up.
Definitely.
I'll go first on this one.
Okay.
My verdict, Whale Rider is a prime example of how an indie film should get made. Passionate filmmaking without an eye on box office or awards or even a larger audience, but rather an eye on telling a universal story that will connect with any audience that watches it. It has more heart than almost any other film we have covered on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it has more spiritual connection than almost any religious film could claim to have. Keisha Castle Hughes is a revelation to watch, as is Rawiri. Parent or not, if you watch her on stage towards the end and are not crying, I am not sure you have a soul.
I agree.
I don't know if I want to talk to you. This is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. It's absolutely see it. There's nothing about this movie that I would hesitate to tell people not to watch. It's awesome.
That's really good. Nice. I agree. I don't know how you have. If you haven't in any way, if you watch it, if you're not impacted by that.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Come on. I know some heartless bitches, but seriously, like, male and female, that's a general term.
Yes.
But even then, like,
it's
watching,
insane.
You watch this movie and you get to that point, and if you have no emotional reaction, I don't know if I want to know you.
Yeah. So for me, it's a focused and heavy coming-of-age drama. Whale Rider is an emotional powerhouse of a film that ultimately is uplifting and joyous and showcases one of the all-time great child acting performances from Keisha Castle Hughes. The term crowd pleaser sometimes is seen as a bad thing, but in this case, for this film, it's a perfect descriptor. I highly recommend it for anyone looking to experience. When you and I talk about, like, why do we watch movies? I do remember, like, so many movies we get done watching, we go, no, that's a movie.
Yeah.
Like, The King's Speech.
I rewatched it recently.
We watched it and go,
love it.
That's a movie.
Yep.
This is a prime example of that, of, like, you sit down for an hour and 45 minutes and go, why do we watch movies? This is why. It's distilled empathy, and it's absolutely incredible. 4.5 out of 5 for me. Absolutely. It's just incredible. Please, please, please watch it.
Yeah, I would like to, anyone watching this now or listening to it now, I want somebody to reach out to me and say, I watched this after listening to this, and let's have a conversation about it. This is one of the rare films. The Pianist is another one that a lot of people didn't watch.
Yeah.
I would love to have a conversation after the fact.
Yes. Please.
Well, we come now to our final segment, which is Quiz Show,
The exciting quiz program, 21.
where we search for trivia surrounding our subject film and try to stump the other. I do have a couple on this. I didn't have really as much on 28 Days Later for some reason, but I do have a couple. I
got three.
Okay, I did two, but I'll go first. You went first last time. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, Keisha Castle Hughes still on TV and has in the FBI Most Wanted. And we talked about her as Obara Sand in Game of Thrones. She has had a career after this, which is good. But she actually provided some voiceover work in the recent Star Wars The Bad Batch on Disney Plus. But this was actually her second foray into the Star Wars universe.
Oh, God.
So she appeared in what Star Wars film before or around this time?
Okay. So before
or around this time. I can't remember. I think it was after this. But after this, she was in what Star Wars film? The film is enough to give you only a few options to choose from.
Around this time.
Because we already skipped episode 2.
We watched that one.
We did not watch that one because we did not want to.
No, we watched it. We watched Phantom Menace.
Did we watch Phantom Menace?
No, we didn't.
No.
Okay, Phantom Menace.
No, Phantom Menace. We
did not watch.
No, we didn't
the first
watch
one. We watched Attack of the Clones.
I can't even. That's how bad that
It's
movie
so
is.
terrible. Yeah, I'm gonna guess Phantom Menace.
No, she was actually the Queen of Naboo in episode 3.
Oh, really?
If you look her up, look up Google search Queen of Naboo.
Revenge of the
episode
Sith?
Yeah, in Revenge of the Sith. And I'm telling you, you're like, oh, yeah, totally.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I was like, all right, here you go. I was like, no, she was very, there you go.
I did
So
not
she
know
was, I had 2 there. I know Game of Thrones, you haven't even watched all of them, right? You haven't finished
I've watched the entire thing.
You did finish. I couldn't remember if you gave up on it like Walking Dead. But like
I did, and then got back into it.
Right, okay. So I was like, I didn't know how far you got in Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah, finished
but
it
I was
off.
like, you mentioned it earlier. So
I do
all
remember seeing her be like,
that's
her.
I had a secondary question of Star Wars there.
That's good. So yeah, at the time, Keisha Castle Hughes was the youngest nominee for Best Actress.
Sure.
At age 13. She held this honor until 2012, when what actress was nominated at just 9 years old for her role in Beast of the Southern Wild?
Here's the funny thing.
Oh, is that your question?
I'm gonna read this. Once again, I find myself doing this. You and I are often confused, like accused of having some. This is my third question. At the time, Castle Hughes was the youngest ever Best Actress nominee at 13 years old. She has since been surpassed by what 9-year-old nominee or whatever in 2012, Kavasane Wallace in Beast of the Southern Wild.
That's so great.
Yeah, I almost we have almost the same damn wording.
Word for word.
Have you seen that movie?
I have not actually.
I effing hate that movie.
And I don't really know if I want to see it.
Hate it. Hate it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that movie is one of the examples where I can see why people do not want to force 10 nominees on the Oscars for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Like, I have to sit through this.
Yeah.
Same with the Tree of Life.
Tree of Life. Ugh.
Right. Like, those are the examples that I'm like, you're forcing this on me. Now, that being said, Kavasane Wallace is absolutely outstanding in Beast of the Southern Wild. She's outstanding in that movie. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
No, terrible movie. Anyway, there we go. Yep.
Nice. You got it.
I did get it. Ding.
Well, let me ask another one.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Keisha Castle Hughes ultimately lost the 2003 Oscar nomination, or that category, to Charlize Theron.
Charlize Theron.
Who would work with Whale Riders director Nikki Caro in what 2005 Minnesota set drama, leading to Theron being nominated for Best Actress again that year.
Is it North Country?
It is North Country.
Okay, yeah. So there's a musical called Girl from North Country North Country about Bob Dylan. So I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, North Country.
Nice.
Have you seen that movie?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yet again, and you're like, it's like Monster. You're like, I saw it once and I'm done.
I'm good.
All right, I got one more now. Or do you have any more?
I got one more.
Okay, cool. All right, this is a little bit. I fixed my eyes. I wrote a paragraph here.
Oh, boy. Buckle up.
So, unfortunately for actors like Cliff Curtis, who are of Pacific Island descent, they are often forced into roles that are not representative of their heritage, usually playing criminals or people from other dark-skinned cultural backgrounds.
Sure.
Prior to this movie, we saw him in Training Day as a Latino.
Yes.
And Blow as a Colombian.
Yes.
This is a guy from New Zealand, by the way, as Escobar.
Yep.
In 2 roles that show this to be true. And he would later play other Latinos, Persians, and even Chechens. Had we started this podcast 1 year sooner, we likely would have covered 2 other films that feature him in roles that are not representative of the Pacific Islanders, where he played 2 Arab characters in what 2 films from 1999.
Oh, my God.
We would have covered both of these films, so these are not obscure.
The Siege.
The Siege was earlier, but he wasn't in that movie. It was 1998. Yeah.
That's all I got. I have no idea.
One of these films I did as a practice podcast.
Oh my God.
Which was starring George Clooney.
Oh God, Three Kings.
Three Kings.
Yes.
He's Amir Abdullah in that. He's one of the he's a parent in that. He's not an obscure role. He's actually in that movie.
Yes.
And then he was in a movie starring Russell Crowe and Al Pacino in the vastly forgotten Insider.
The Insider.
He's a sheik in that one.
Oh,
he's a Pacific Islander who's sort of forced into playing Arab characters.
You have dark skin.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we would have covered him. We've covered him now 3 times. He's outstanding.
I totally forgot he's an Insider.
Yeah.
Yes.
Outstanding movie, by the way.
Yeah. And that's like another slow burn of like, you sign up for it and think it's interesting. Okay, so good.
There you go.
Speaking of Cliff Curtis,
I was like, what score are we talking about today, Tim? Okay, yeah. We already did with
Lisa Gerard. His film debut was in what 1993 film?
Oh my God.
Also set in New Zealand, in which a young actress in her screen debut was nominated for an Academy Award. In this case, for Best Supporting Actress, that she ultimately won.
Wow, that's a good one. Because now I'm like rotating through the 90s and they're... Because initially I was thinking of Kate Winslet in Heavenly Creatures or whatever, but that's... No. What do you got?
The Piano.
It was?
Yep. Anna
Really?
Paquin. Yep. His like big screen, like small role. But yeah, film debut. The Piano.
Man.
Holly Hunter won. Anna Paquin won.
Yeah.
But how crazy, like...
I'm so glad I don't know that because I really don't like that movie and I've watched it once and once was enough.
I saw it like in the 90s. I'm like, I'm never watching this again.
No. Wow. All right. I even looked at Cliff Curtis's. Clearly.
Cliff Curtis. You didn't go back. You didn't go before 99.
Way back then. I don't when does Reputation end? Yeah. Did he play?
Representation
I'm curious. Did he? I saw some story that he's only actually played a Pacific Islander like 3 or 4 times in his career.
Yeah.
Like he's always just been like either American or some sort of Arab or whatever. Like he's played more. Like he has played more backgrounds or more
non-original.
He is. Yeah. He has. No. He's just played more like. I don't even know what I'm thinking of. In terms
he's like
of
Alfred Molina.
Yeah,
true. Like,
because he's
the dude.
Yeah,
like is British, but he
has.
Yeah, exactly. He'll play anything, or he's asked to.
Yeah,
same thing.
That's
Cliff
the
Curtis,
problem, right?
Everything he does.
Cliff Curtis is awesome.
Oh, he's so good. Though.
We will talk about him again in the future, I'm sure. That brings us to the end of our happy hour episode on Whale Rider. If you haven't already, please go back and listen to it. Yeah. Please go back and listen to our previous episodes, all featured on your favorite streaming platform. And for some fun episodes later this summer on Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, another movie we haven't decided yet, and special 30 years, 4 Beers episodes on Jurassic Park and Dazed and Confused. We want to say thank you for taking the time to listen and for clicking that like or subscribe button on your devices. Find us on Twitter at years_beers and on Facebook, or head to 20years4beers.com. This has been 20 Years 4 Beers. My name is Steve.
I'm Tim.
And thanks for listening.
Thank you. cultural hegemony of like we are the stories
What
of the world.
did you just say?
Yes. Yeah.
What word?
Hegemony.
I don't know what that is. I
What
know
is wrong
some
with
heartless bitches, but seriously, at least it's not Liquor Girl. It's called Power, bitch.
Yeah, you got it.